Hernandez, and I'm the great-great-grandson of Joe Singh and Francis Moreno Singh.
And who's that sitting next to you?
And this is my grandmother, Frances Aguayo.
I'm Mary Frances Aguayo. I'm the granddaughter of Joe Singh and Francis Singh.
Hi guys! Hi Ron! I'm Mary Frances. How are you? So good to see you again.
My name is Esther Chung Martin. I'm the Asian American Community Archivist at the Austin History Center. We document the history of Austin and Travis County, and we're also the official repository for city records. This program began in 2007. The goal is to collect historical information about our population. We are very underdocumented historically. The Singh family, their collection is pretty extraordinary because all those letters, all the books in there, they were, you could tell, very, very old, but also from the person that had lived here so long ago and of Chinese descent. So it was very exciting for me because that was the first collection I got, but very meaningful too because it's such an old collection.
Well, I can't say too much because I didn't know him, but according to everybody, all the family used to love him. He was a hardworking man, and he looked after his children and his wife. My grandmother always used to say we were part Chinese. I mean, that was an understanding. Now, we had steamed rice like 3 times a week. Anything else, stew, whatever, but we had the steamed rice because that's what my grandfather used to like, and that's what she used to make all the time. Evidently, where he was from, there wasn't too many jobs. So he talked to his friend, and they decided that they would come to the United States.
A lot of researchers have looked at this document and just been really, really surprised and happy that we have this because, most of these were destroyed or they've been lost over time. The one mystery was that his name is listed here as Joe Hall. So I get that question a lot when people...
For years and years, all our utility bills came as Hong Lee.
Yes.
That's the way it came.
That's right. And I think the words meant something to them in Chinese. I don't think it was a person's name per se. Just like Joe Singh, as we know, that's not his actual name, right? His actual name in Chinese was Zhou Fengsheng. They've obviously changed the name so it's easier for people to pronounce.
Right.
And I think Hong Li is kind of the same way. It's not. There are a lot of things we just don't have the answers to, a lot of unknowns behind this family's history. I'm gonna show you some of the photographs. I think these are really fun. People love to look at these. What we do know is that he came here, he ended up in Austin, and he ended up marrying Francis Moreno. And just to see that together side by side, you do see the stark contrast in that how did a Chinese man end up marrying a Mexican American?
And they kept saying, did she go to China or did she go? So, when we were little, we really didn't know.
It's a puzzle and we don't have all the pieces to it. And what we were kind of thinking is that our grandmother had a boarding home, and so that he might have been one of her boarders, and that's possibly how they met. But we don't know that, to be true or not.
My grandmother knew that he couldn't speak too much English, and he was gonna have a hard time. And she said, the best thing for us to do is take in washing, and that's how the laundry started. St. Mary's Academy was on 7th Street, a block away from Congress. They rented the house across the street, and that's where they had the laundry. They used to do a lot of shirts for the people downtown, the bankers and all that. If they were extra nice shirts, well, they have to do it by hand. It got to the point where they used to do a lot of laundry, and they had this carriage with a horse, and they used to deliver the laundry. That's the only thing that they ever did was the laundry. The way that he died was he was crossing the street and a car hit him. The man didn't stop, and we never knew who it was, and so that was the end of my grandfather. My grandmother kept the laundry going as far as she could, and she raised her 3 daughters and 1 son. This is my mother, Zenobia. This is my Aunt Margaret. This is my Aunt Ruby, and this is my Uncle Joe. My mother got sick, and she went from bad to worse, and she died in my grandmother's house. We had already moved in with her. I was about 5 years old, and my sister was 3, and my grandmother took us over. When my grandmother was old enough to get the old age pension, I remember I must have been about 10. Oh, she was just crying and crying and crying, and I kept saying, well, what happened to my grandma? What happened? Finally, she said, when I went to ask for my pension, they said I couldn't get it because when I married my husband, I lost citizenship. And she says, but I was born and raised here in town. It doesn't matter. You married a Chinese and you're no longer a U.S. citizen. My grandmother always used to say that they always looked down on Chinese. And they were regarded as second-class citizens. It's hard to swallow, but yeah. And my Uncle Joe was one of those type of people that didn't have too much to say. How he ever met his wife and got married with her, I'll never know. He was a very quiet person. This is his wife, Mauricia.
This is Joe Singh's abacus that he used, I suppose, for his business or, do whatever calculations he had to. And that's actually, I want to say, one of the very few things that he taught, at least his son, Joe Jr., that he taught him how to use. But it had stopped there, like none of us knew how to use it. This is the only Singh that I knew, Margaret Singh. After school, I would spend time with her along with Mauricia Moreno, her sister-in-law. She never married, but she did have, her share of boyfriends and, going out and, to the dances around town and all that. She was the first homeowner of the family because, in my grandfather not being a citizen, they weren't able to purchase property. And so she was the first one to buy a home, this home. And when she passed away, she left the house to us. We had to install central air and heat. After they've installed it, the man told me, he's like, I found a box in the attic and I left it on the table for you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you. I told my mother, I was like, there's a box on the table, look in it. I had gone out to run an errand, and when I came back, she was crying, and I was like, what's wrong? And she goes, this is our family. And it was a box full of documents that I guess either my grandmother, Frances Moreno, or my grandfather had put, everything in a box. And it was his certificate when he came to the United States. There were family photos and letters written in Mandarin. We always knew that we had an Asian grandfather, but to actually, being that none of us had ever met him and just had, heard stories and maybe have seen one photo, it was such a big deal to see, a whole life in this box that we had never known.
One of the things I really have taken away by being in this job and meeting these families is the fact that the term Asian American, it's not something that you can really understand one-dimensionally.
We didn't grow up, including my grandmother, didn't grow up with having that Asian culture as a daily thing in our life.
I'm very proud to say that I'm part Chinese. But when it comes to what exactly are you, I'm Hispanic. But,
I have such a small percentage of the Asian in me, but I'm definitely proud to have that, to have, a grandfather who is Asian. With the help of the Austin History Center, I was able to apply to get this home historic with the state of Texas and with the city of Austin. So now it is the first Asian American historical home in the state.